77 WABC, protecting and serving to the highest degree.
Former New York City Police Commissioner Bernard Kerik.
It's Behind the Badge with Bernie Kerik, a blue-blooded American.
This is Bernie Kerik, Behind the Badge at 77 WABC, and we are back dialing in from Oklahoma City. And I wanted to touch on a few things that's come up over the last week. And to do that, I want to remind you guys that, I guess 3 or 4 weeks ago, I talked about the McCloskeys out west in St. Louis, Missouri, the people that were charged with a crime because they attempted to protect their personal property. Antifa and Black Lives Matter showed up at their home in a big demonstration. They had people that were armed in that group. They broke down the fence to get to their property. It was a private street, a gated community. I went out with the McCloskeys, with Rudy Giuliani. Rudy got to interview them. We sat with them. We talked to them. The nicest people you could imagine. And I was stunned that not only were they charged, but the charges still stand. They've been crucified in the press, in the media. They're being targeted by a prosecutor that is a Soros-funded prosecutor, one of these people that focuses on villainizing the police and victimizing the thugs, somebody that doesn't prosecute the people she should. I think they're only prosecuting about 20% of the homicides. It's become so bad that the Attorney General for the state of Missouri has actually had to have the governor sign a bill or an executive order that allows the Attorney General to get involved with homicide investigations in local jurisdictions, one of which is St. Louis, because the prosecutor's not doing their job. And I have to tell you, I wish that was the case around the rest of the country, where attorneys general and governors started to do a better job at keeping an eye on local municipalities. The problem is you have mayors, you have city council members, you have governors that they're not doing their job. And when a mayor and a city council and a prosecutor, a local prosecutor, basically victimizes the thugs, doesn't prosecute the thugs, villainizes the cops, targets the cops, well, you're going to wind up in a situation where you begin to have chaos. And we've seen that in Atlanta. We've seen that in Portland. We've seen it in Seattle. Portland, you have, we just talked about, you have a prosecutor that's, really going out of his way to not prosecute certain cases. Now, in, something that's come up in the last 3 weeks, you've had this case in Kenosha, Wisconsin, where there was riots in the streets. A group of people got together to basically protect that community because the police and the mayor wasn't doing the job that had to be done. During the course of this, you had a circumstance where one of the people that were there to protect a car lot wound up being targeted by Antifa, and a number of these rioters, these extremely violent rioters, chased him down, attacked him. One of them had a gun. He had an AR-15 in his possession. He shot and killed 2 of his attackers, and shot and wounded another. His name is Kyle. He is now sitting in a county jail in the adjoining state. They're fighting. He's fighting extradition to get back to Wisconsin. I think he's kind of better off where he is because he'd be targeted by the left, and I'm sure with the death threats and things like that his family's already suffered. I don't think it would be beneficial to him to be out. But I wanted to talk about a few of these incidents, and I'll touch on this one thing that was really bugging me on the last few days. We watched the Vice President Biden, at the debate with President Trump, and in the aftermath of that, in the aftermath of the debate, the Vice President went on Twitter, on his personal Twitter account, and he referenced Kyle, and he did so in a manner that was libel, defamatory, unjustified, should not have happened. And Kyle's attorney is somebody by the name of Lynn Wood. And for anybody that's followed any of these cases, Lynn Wood represents the McCloskeys. Lynn Wood represents Kyle Rittenhouse. Lynn Wood represented Richard Jules. That was, he was charged or targeted by the government for the bombing in Atlanta back at the World many years ago. Lynn Wood represented Nicholas Sandmann, who was this poor kid's been targeted by every member, every group of the mainstream media, CNN and others. And two things happened in the last day or two. On the Sandmann case, Lynn Wood got a major victory in that a judge refused to dismiss a number of the defamation suits that's been filed against many of the mainstream media outlets, and I think that's about as good as you can get, because the judges know this case has to move forward. And then just yesterday, Lynn Wood sent a letter of demand retraction letter to the vice president and his campaign, calling for him to retract the comments made about Kyle Rittenhouse. So if I was the vice president in this campaign, and I was on the receiving end of that letter, I'd probably want to deal with that retraction, because Lynn Wood, for anybody that knows him, he's an icon in the legal world of defamation. He is probably the top defamation attorney in the United States. And I won't get into more of his background than I have to, because otherwise he'll yell at me when he gets off the phone. But I actually have him on the line, and I want to welcome him to Behind the Badge. Lynn, thanks for coming on, my man.
Well, Bernie Kerik, it is an honor to speak with you. And I hear you praising me. Let's just put things in perspective. I'm the one talking to the hero. I know what you did for this country in New York City on 9/11. I know what you've been trying to do for this country ever since, and what you did before. So I want to thank you for your efforts for freedom and justice. And mine, listen, I'm just a lawyer. I represent some very interesting and accused clients who were innocent. And I'm blessed to be able to represent them. It's a privilege to represent them. And I, like you, intend to fight back for truth and fight back for justice and to fight back for freedom.
Well, listen, Lynn, let me start here. Give us an update on the Rittenhouse. Where are we with the case? And to be forthright and above board, I do work a lot with. So give me an update on where we are with the Rittenhouse case.
I will. Kyle Rittenhouse is still in a youth facility detention center in Illinois. Kyle Rittenhouse is a political prisoner. There are motions that will be filed, and there are issues to be raised in Illinois about whether he is to be properly extradited to Wisconsin to face these charges. He can't make bail until he gets to Wisconsin, but he's safe right now in Illinois. There are serious legal issues that need to be addressed before there's any decision on extradition. What we have is a young boy who went over to Kenosha to help people. He has training as an EMT. He was given a gun by a friend of his in Kenosha because obviously he was walking into harm's way. So he had to defend himself if necessary, and boy, oh boy, was it necessary. Kyle Rittenhouse was attacked viciously by 3 individuals with serious criminal records. Kyle's in jail. They're not. Something's wrong in Kenosha. When you talk about prosecutors, talk about the people in Kenosha, because they've got a young boy in confinement in Illinois wanting him to come over to be tried for murder. There's not one shred of evidence, not one iota of evidence that Kyle Rittenhouse did anything other than to defend himself as any boy or any man or any woman would do when they're attacked, threatened with serious bodily injury, if not death. The boy is innocent. He's a hero, and he needs to be let out of his political confinement.
So, Lynn, so now he's sitting in jail. He's been charged, but I understand he has not been indicted. Is that true?
He has not been indicted, and I don't believe that any grand jury in any part of this country would ever indict him. Bernie, there are two videos. We put out an 11-minute video, and a Bernie Sanders supporter put out a 1-hour documentary. Every inch of the videotape has been examined, and there is not one even suggestion of wrongdoing by Kyle Rittenhouse. So he should not be indicted by anybody, particularly the people in Kenosha. The people in Kenosha ought to be thanking this boy for coming over there to help them instead of putting him in jail to try to put him in prison for the rest of his life. He's 17 years old. We've lost all sense of dignity for our youth. We've lost all sense of dignity and respect for our fellow man.
That's what's killing me. He hasn't been indicted. I can't fathom that they're going to go before a grand jury and present the evidence that we have seen. I mean, these are real videos from all elements of that night that clearly show that he acted in self-defense. And when you look at his record, when you look at the video of what was going on before the actual attacks, he was there, he was interviewed by somebody, as a matter of fact. He was actually interviewed and said on camera, he was really there to help with medical rendering. He was helped to provide security. He was, and if I'm not mistaken, he actually, one of the Antifa or the protesters, rioters, they needed medical attention, and he was responding to that. So this wasn't a kid that went there, for target practice. This was a kid that went there to help a community and winds up getting attacked and, defends himself. So I don't know. I don't know how somebody like this gets indicted before a grand jury. But I want to switch gears for a second. Let's talk about this retraction letter to the vice president.
Happy to do so. It was sent out this morning. And when I saw the campaign ad that Biden and his campaign put out, I was appalled. You would think that someone who represents himself as being qualified to serve as the President of the United States and enforce the laws of this country fairly and equally under the Constitution would have enough basic common sense and knowledge to know that there is a presumption of innocence in this country. And you don't go out and brand this young boy, 17 years old, as a white supremacist. That's false. A member of some type of white supremacist militia group. That's false. You don't tell people that he was responsible in any part for the violence in Kenosha. And believe it or not, he said Portland. Kyle Rittenhouse has never been to Portland. I have to question the judgment of Joe Biden. Whether I agree with him politically is irrelevant. Justice and truth is nonpartisan. We ought to have someone that has the sense not to make these false accusations, because the last time I checked, I always go by the standard that he was without sin, cast the first stone. I don't think Joe Biden needs to be casting stones at anybody, certainly, where the evidence that is publicly available before he put out his campaign ad shows that Kyle Rittenhouse was innocent. Look, Kyle's been branded by the vice president, wants to be president. He's been branded by Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, who's called him a mass murderer, for God's sakes, and banned anybody from making positive comments about him on Facebook, and has taken down all efforts to raise money for his defense. If you look at the video, you'll see that after the third attack occurred, that another protester was standing in front of Kyle, who threw his arms up in a surrender type mode. Kyle was still in a shooting position. Kyle, at age 17, had the quick judgment to know the guy was surrendering. He could have taken a clear shot at him if he was a mass murderer. Kyle looked, turned around, ran for the police to get help. What's going on in this country from people like Mark Zuckerberg, and now, unfortunately, the vice president who's running for president, is they're perpetrating lies to the American public. The American public needs to learn the truth. The truth is going to ultimately set Kyle Rittenhouse free, Bernie.
Well, listen, I have a minute to go, and I'm really dying to know what's the next step for Nicholas Sandmann. We have a minute left. What? Give me the scoop.
We got one more motion that I expect will be dismissed in the next 30 days on the case we filed against Gannett. Then we'll proceed within the months to beginning discovery. Discovery is where I'll be able to sit down with these people in the media on cross-examination. We'll be able to get their documents, and we're going to be able to prove without any doubt why they did what they did falsely against Nicholas. And we're going to show that it was the result of bias. There's an agenda at work in the mainstream media. They're nothing but propaganda tools for a socialist group that's trying to overthrow our country and our Constitution. We'll be able to get into that in the Sandmann case in the next couple of months.
Well, Lynn, listen, thanks for coming on. Keep up the great work. This is Bernie Kerik on 77 WABC Behind the Badge.